The number was 38. 38 neighbors who saw a murder and did nothing. It came from a single lunch between a newspaper editor and a police commissioner. No one counted them, no one interviewed them. And within a year, it was science. For 60 years, that number has been taught as one of the darkest facts about human nature. Proof that a crowd will watch you die. It's in the textbooks, it's in the TED Talks. It has a name. It's also almost entirely wrong. Not the murder. The murder was real. The 38, that part was built. This is the story of how a feeling became a fact.
March 13th, 1964, a little after 3 a.m. Kitty Genovese, everyone called her Kitty, parks her car in a lot in Kew Gardens, Queens, and starts the short walk home. She's 28. She manages a bar. She's about 100 feet from her door. A man named Winston Moseley is waiting. He follows her. He catches her. He stabs her in the back. Kitty screams. And here is the first detail the famous story leaves out. A neighbor hears her and shouts down from a window, "Let that girl alone!" And Moseley runs. He gets in his car and he drives away. If the story ended there would be no story. A woman is attacked, a neighbor yells, the attacker flees. But Moseley didn't go home. He circled the block. He changed his hat. And roughly 10 minutes later, he came back. He found Kitty where she had crawled, into a hallway at the back of the building, out of sight of the street. What happened next happened behind a door, where no one on the block could have seen it.
A neighbor named Sophia Farrar ran to her. She held Kitty in her arms. Kitty Genovese died on the way to the hospital, in the arms of someone who came. That is the crime. 2 attacks in 2 places over about half an hour. Now, the newspaper.
2 weeks later, the editor of the New York Times, a man named Abe Rosenthal, sat down to lunch with the city's police commissioner. The commissioner mentioned the Genovese case, and he mentioned a number. 38 people, he said, had watched and done nothing. Rosenthal was electrified. He sent a reporter, Martin Gansberg, back out to Kew Gardens, and on March 27th, the Times ran it on the front page. The headline? 37 who saw murder didn't call the police. Read that again. The headline says 37.
The story underneath says 38. Nobody was ever quite sure which, because, and this is the part that matters, no one had actually counted. Here's what you would assume. You'd assume a reporter stood in that neighborhood, found 38 people, and confirmed that each one watched Kitty Genovese die. That is not what happened. The number came from a police estimate, passed across a lunch table, printed as fact. It was at best how many people the police had spoken to on that block, not how many saw a murder. Almost none of them could have. The killing happened indoors. But the number was too good to check. 38. Specific. Damning. It didn't describe the night. It described a fear the city already had. That in a big enough crowd, nobody is watching out for you. The story didn't report that fear. It confirmed it. And then, something strange happened. The story left journalism and became a science. 2 young psychologists, John Darley and Bib Latany, read about the 38 witnesses and asked a sharper question than the newspaper had. Not, how could people be so cold? But what if the crowd itself was the cause? What if the more people who are present, the less likely any single one is to act? Because every one of them assumes someone else already has. They called it diffusion of responsibility. And unlike the newspaper, they tested it. In one study, a person sits alone in a booth and hears another student over an intercom begin to have a seizure.
Alone, almost everyone gets up to help, fast. But tell them 4 other people are also listening, and most of them just sit there, waiting for someone else to be the one. The effect held, again and again for decades. In 2011, a review pooled more than 100 studies and tens of thousands of people. The bystander effect is real. Smaller than the legend, but real. So keep this straight, because it is the hinge of the whole story. The psychology is solid. The case that made it famous is not. The experiments never needed Kitty Genovese, but her name and that number is how the science walked into the textbook. All 10 of the best-selling psychology textbooks tell the story of the 38. The parable arrived first. The proof came later. And the parable is what stuck.
It took 40 years for anyone to seriously check the number. In 2007, 3 researchers, Rachel Manning, Mark Levine, and Alan Collins, published what they found in the journal American Psychologist. They went looking for the 38 witnesses. They could not find them. No evidence that 38 people saw the attack. No evidence they watched it happen. No evidence they sat still and chose to do nothing.
The assistant district attorney on the case said it flatly. Of everyone they interviewed, they found about half a dozen who actually saw enough to use in court. Half a dozen, not 38. And of those, most caught only a fragment, a figure, a scuffle, in the dark, from a window, and assumed it was a lover's quarrel or a drunk. One man opened his door and saw too much. By at least one account, a call was made to police. And Sophia Farrar didn't watch at all. She ran into the dark toward a screaming woman without knowing what she would find. The story said nobody came. Someone came. So what was the 38, really? It wasn't a count. It was a number that turned a feeling into a fact. The city was afraid that modern life had made people cold, and here was arithmetic that seemed to prove it. 38. You can't argue with a number. That is what numbers are for. The science that grew out of it is real. It's useful. It stands on its own evidence. But the thing everyone actually remembers, 38 faces in 38 windows watching a woman die, that was never reporting. It was a parable, and it fit so well that nobody needed it to be true.
Here is where it lands. The correction exists. Rasenberger wrote it. Manning and her colleagues wrote it. Kitty's own brother made a film about it. And almost none of it is in the textbook. The story that was checked and found false is still the story we teach. The truth became the footnote. The parable stayed the lesson. You know something about human nature because of this case. You know a crowd makes people cold. And the specific proof you're holding, the 38, was settled by 2 men at a lunch 60 years ago and never once counted.
Someone came for Kitty Genovese. We just never taught that part.